Let's see, Volume 3 is now the 32nd Marvel Cinematic Universe film and the second so far in 2023. Back to direct for his final Marvel stint and writing the movie is James Gunn. The film is about, of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, is still reeling from the death of her version of Gamora while she's trying to regroup with the new version of Gamora, once again played by Zoe Saldana. Rocket, voiced by Bradley Cooper, is trying to overcome his previous demons, and we learned about his backstory, which involved the overarching villain of the movie, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji, who also teamed up with James Gunn back on Peacemaker. Also, as always, Drax, Mantis, Nebula are involved, all back played by Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, and Pom Klementieff, and also Groot voiced by Vin Diesel. Also joining the fray is also Adam Warlock, played by Will Poulter, who with his mom, played by Elizabeth Debicki, they are also trying to go after Rocket for a specific reason. The film is 2 hours and 30 minutes and is PG-13. Welcome back to a brand new review here on Mac Talks Movies. Today we're talking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Ring the bell if you're new to the channel. I do movie reviews, TV show reviews, and movie rankings. So subscribe, ring that bell if you're new to the channel. Also do a box office breakdown show every single Monday, which will include this, obviously, this upcoming Monday. And we'll see if there is truly Marvel fatigue at the box office when we break down those numbers on Monday afternoon. Comment down below. What are your thoughts on this film? First of all, did you like it? Not like it? If you've seen it, tell me, what is your ranking of the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies? Was it satisfying for you? Was it not? Were you crying? Let me know all those thoughts. If you've not seen it, tell me, or are you going to check it out this weekend? Or if you are not one of those people who are going to be seeing it this weekend, tell me why you're not checking this out. Are you in, or do you have Marvel fatigue? And also, please like the video, guys. So I'm back in LA and I saw this movie in IMAX. Luckily, I will be back in my IMAX theater for most of the summer with all the big movies coming out. And I was very excited for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, this will be a hot take. I was not the biggest fan of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. For me, that's a bottom tier MCU film that really left me disappointed. But again, these are some of my favorite characters of the MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is firmly in my top 10 MCU films. And I just love their incorporation as well in Endgame and Infinity War. Not so much in Thor: Love and Thunder, but that for sure. So, and also knowing that this was the last film for a lot of these actors, a lot of the James Gunn has talked about the, obviously now him running DC. It's the last time that he'll be getting a chance to direct probably this franchise ever again, unless for some reason he does not stay as the DC head for long term. But for the moment, it'll be the last time he'll be directing this franchise. And so let's get into this movie. I'll get my positives and negatives and my score. So right off the bat, I do want to say I absolutely love this movie from start to finish. It was a emotionally satisfying film. It was an emotional film. It's a very funny movie, but it's definitely the most serious Guardians of the Galaxy film of the 3 by far. Not that there hasn't been seriousness in the first 2 films, especially the first film, but this movie has a lot more jokes there, and that's my biggest improvement, I think, for the movie over Volume 2, which is that the humor in this movie just doesn't feel forced. There isn't, a bunch of humor scenes. The movie is very funny, but the movie has its story and it focuses on that. It doesn't have a joke to interrupt the flow of a serious moment or something like that. So when the movie goes serious or dark, it goes there. And as a lot of people are saying, this probably is the darkest movie that the MCU has made, and now it's 32 films in its filmography. It's a dark film for a lot of reasons, and the big reason why is that the majority of the movie is looking through the lens of flashbacks with Rocket, who obviously is, as I said, voiced by Bradley Cooper, who's getting basically worked on. We see how he basically becomes the Rocket we know in a really rough way by the High Evolutionary. He also meets Lila, who's played by Linda Cardellini, voiced by Linda Cardellini. And there's a relationship there, and it's really emotional. I think every time they keep cutting back to flashbacks to Rocket's early times, it is very emotional. It's something that you kind of expected coming in, but even if you expect this to be a dark movie or an emotional movie, it just gets you even more by watching what happens to Rocket, leading him up to what time when we know Rocket all the way back in the first Guardians. Again, he's my favorite character of all the Guardians. He's easily a top 3 MCU character for me. So for him to basically become one of the main plot points, really was the main plot point that was driving the movie, was awesome. I know James Gunn has talked about this as his favorite character, and it is for me too. But the vocal performance is obviously really excellent for Bradley Cooper. The CGI and visual effects were stunning in this movie. And I think Marvel has really struggled since the pandemic, really since all the way back to Black Widow, with the CGI and special effects just not being up to par. But they're really great special effects, not just this Rocket and Groot, and also, both of them look better than ever from a visual effects point of view, special effects point of view, but also when you get to all these planets and all these animals and all these creatures, it just flows seamlessly with the human characters in the film. And that is a great thing because this movie desperately needed a lot of those things to be up to par. And this was even beyond that. Really great visual effects, I think, do need to be recognized during award season a long time from now. Another thing that I think this film is so great at is that everyone, for the most part, other than Groot, I would say, has an arc going for themselves. Star-Lord is still recovering from Gamora's death from Infinity War. And while he has a Gamora, it's not the person who she was. And obviously, he just wants that to be the Gamora that he obviously fell in love with, but it's not. And I think they do a great job. Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana do a great job. And Zoe Saldana has one of the tougher tasks of this movie, which is that she's playing the same character that you've known for the last 9 years, which is kind of crazy that it's been 9 years these characters have been on screen. But she's basically playing a completely new version of the character. And I don't want to spoil what she's been up to since Endgame, because they didn't say in the trailer, luckily. But her performance is really terrific. I think it's going to be one of the most underappreciated parts of the movie because she is playing it does feel like a completely different version of Gamora, not just the way, not what she's saying, but the performance feels completely different for what she's been playing for the last 9 years. So I really appreciate that performance. Also, I think they finally gave Drax something to do from an arc point of view towards the third act of the movie. He's kind of been just a punchline in every appearance he's been in since all the way back to the first Guardians. I feel like he's been missing that edge. He might not have an edge in this movie. They give him a really emotional arc towards the third act of the movie with really good messaging involved. And he was great. Nebula continues to get better and better movie by movie, of course, greatly played by Karen Gillan, but she gets more and more to do. Her relationship with Rocket is another part I think will be underappreciated. They really bought a relationship together all the way back from Volume 2, leading all the way through, obviously, Endgame, and they are very close. And I actually like that dynamic a lot. Mantis as well, who I thought was a real misfire off the bat in Volume 2, but Pom Klementieff has continued to grow into the role, and the writing has gotten so much stronger for that character since then. I think even project by project, she's been better on screen, so she continues to deliver. Of course, Groot is great as always, but I think what sets this movie apart from the other 2 Guardians films, even though I don't think this is better than Volume 1, is the villain. The High Evolutionary, as I said, played by Chukwudi Iwuji from Peacemaker. He is absolutely special, dynamic in this performance. He's clearly a bad dude, but there's a psychotic, driven element to him that makes him the most threatening villain that these characters have faced other than Thanos. And I don't think that's even close. I think the problem with the first 2 films, the only issue I have with the first one was that just the villain just wasn't a huge threat. He didn't feel like he could really kill our Guardians. Every ego just never worked for me in the second one. The High Evolutionary is an absolute threat. Now, obviously, he's a big time threat to Rocket more than many of the other characters, but he just feels like a threat to the world. He's not trying to take over the world as they talk about in the movie. He's trying to make his perfect world. He's not trying to destroy civilization like Thanos. He's trying to create a world for his type of people, I should say. And it is really threatening. The intensity, the character is so intense. It's a creepy but dynamic performance, as I talked about. And this is easily for me a top 10 MCU villain, a must needed. I think this is probably the best MCU villain they've gotten since Tony Leung's performance as the Mandarin in Shang-Chi. I think this is easily the best they've gotten since then. Easily the best villain out of the 3 Guardians films. As this movie is really emotional, and while I didn't cry in the movie, you can just feel the emotions and you just care about the characters. You've been on this ride. If you've been on this ride since the 2014 film, it's truly an underdog story that they've made it this long. It's a comic book that obviously is not very famous, not a big deal, but they've come all this way, and you really care about all these characters. And the reason why it gets elevated is because James Gunn gives them arcs. The action is also really well done. And so I think it's the best action scenes that these 3 films have had to date. Again, James Gunn as a director continues to grow confidence by movie, which is also terrific. So it was funny, it was emotional. There's a lot of things. I do have a couple critiques with the movie. I think the first one is that I do think that at points there is just a bit too much going on. I think the biggest reason why is that I do think they completely wasted the Adam Warlock character. Again, I think Elizabeth Debicki and Will Poulter, as Aisha and Adam Warlock are fantastic actors, and they are very good in the movie. It's not them. But after setting up Adam Warlock for so many years, it does feel like a giant waste of time in this movie. I do feel like maybe if James Gunn wasn't fired and they maybe had a pre-planned Guardians Volume 4, that maybe he could have a bigger impact in that movie, having his own movie to go up against the Guardians. But because it feels like he's kind of crammed in to the High Evolutionary and the Guardians plot, it isn't that interesting when he's on screen. And he's actually used for a lot more comedy than I thought. When the movie started, I was like, okay, this is a good start for Adam Warlock. And then it kind of just dips off from his opening action scene in the movie. So for me, I felt like it was a giant waste of time. Obviously, I would love to see Will Poulter back as Adam Warlock, because I do think he's a good Adam Warlock. I just hope they give him more time to play this character. I did think it was a bit of a waste of time in this movie. Another part is that it was a bit too long. It's 2.5 hours. And it certainly does not need to be too long. It could have been cut by like 15, 20 minutes. It did feel like the third act was kind of dragging just a bit. Obviously, they're trying to wrap up a lot of story, like this is the end of a trilogy. But at times it just kept dragging on. My only other nitpick is that there were times where they kept flashing back to Rocket, and they would cut back from wrapping up a flashback. And then there would be like obviously like an 80s or 90s song that plays. It kind of just tonally, sometimes the transition out of Rocket's flashbacks, tricky thing to transition out of because they're so dramatic and so emotional. So those are my critiques, but overall, I think this is a fantastic addition to the MCU, a much needed victory, I think, from a quality point of view for the MCU. If you're not counting basically Spider-Man No Way Home, I think this is easily the best film for Marvel since Avengers Endgame, which is much needed. Also another point, there are 2 post-credit scenes. There's one mid-credit scene, and there's one that is at the very, very end of the credits. I think both definitely need to be watched. So overall, I'm going to give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for me a 4.5 out of 5. I'm going to go 87%. For Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it does have a little bit of issues for me. I was too emotionally invested and satisfied with how they completed this trilogy. Everyone had an arc. The villain was captivating to watch. And you are just rooting for all these characters. So that's my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. What are your thoughts? Comment down below, like the video, subscribe. More videos are coming soon. Talk to you guys soon.